Hello and welcome back to Perspectives. On today's show, the war between India and Pakistan may have reached a physical ceasefire, but across mainstream and social media it's reaching full-scale conflict as India's propaganda machine launches a tsunami of misinformation to try to regain control of the narrative. But it appears this could be a war they're now losing. Meanwhile, a Pakistan minister expresses gratitude to the global Sikh community for their unwavering support under Indian aggression. In Canada, it's the dawn of a new era as Prime Minister Carney appoints 3 Sikhs to government ministerial positions. And a recent Punjabi Sikh animated film receives a major accolade as a story of Sikh Captain America hits the mainstream. All this and more on today's show, but joining me as always for Perspectives is our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus, and good morning to our viewers out there. As you know, we have seen a big jump in our subscribers on the channel here, and we encourage you, if you haven't yet hit subscribe, please do so as it helps us to reach a broader audience. Back to you, Angus.
Indeed it does. And James and I together, as always, will be bringing you our perspectives on the daily news affecting the Sikh community across the world. And as usual, of course, we'll be taking a look at loads of great comments at the end of the show, so do stay tuned for that. Right, James, what are you going to start us off with this morning?
Well, as you touched on in the intro, Pakistan minister has publicly expressed his appreciation for not just the Sikhs that are in Pakistan, but also the Sikh diaspora around the world, as they stood together shoulder to shoulder in challenging India's attacks and the current crisis that was hitting the region. Now, Punjabi Minister for Minorities, that was Ramesh Singh Arora, and he sent an extended heartfelt thanks to the Sikh global community for their unwavering solidarity with Pakistan and its armed forces during the recent tensions. And that goes hand in hand with some of the stories that we reported on, including one that Angus covered last night. Now, in a statement issued on Wednesday, the minister praised the Sikh diaspora for their strong show of support, heightening their contributions to fostering unity and resilience in challenging times. The Sikh global community has stood by Pakistan with remarkable steadfast, and their support strengthens our resolve to promote peace and harmony, Arora said. Now, the Sikh minister emphasized the deep historical cultural ties between Pakistan and the Sikh community, noting that their solidarity reflects shared values of compassion and mutual respect. He also acknowledged the community's efforts in promoting interfaith dialogue and supporting humanitarian initiatives across the country. Arora's remarks come amid heightened regional tensions, which we've been covering, with Pakistan navigating complex geopolitical conditions. The minister's message underscores the importance of global support in bolstering national unity and reinforcing Pakistan's commitment to protecting minority rights. This is something that is in contrast to what we cover in terms of the BJP and Narendra Modi. When it comes to protecting the rights of minorities, it seems that Pakistan is recognizing that the contributions of minorities in their nation, while India still tries to suppress and basically wipe out the minorities and try to bring them in under the Hindutva fold. Now, the Sikh community, both within Pakistan and abroad, has long been recognized for its contributions to the nation's social and cultural fabric. Minister Arora reiterated the government's dedication to ensuring the welfare and security of all minorities, including the Sikhs, fostering an inclusive society. Now, if we look between the lines there, obviously we know that this is a pretty clear-cut message to the Sikhs that they are appreciated, and that is something that is echoed around the world. Now, when we look at the potential of Khalistan, this again reiterates the need for Khalistan because it is a recognition of what Sikhs stand for and what Khalistan would be based upon. The foundation of a true Khalistan would be a peaceful one that comes together to help others in times of challenge and need, and also steps in to help to negotiate or mediate in times of crisis. And that's, I think, another clear sign as to why we need to see Khalistan come to a reality, Angus.
Indeed, absolutely right, and I think it's very interesting that how this war has unfolded. Well, war, it hasn't become, fortunately, it hasn't become a war, but this recent explosion of violence between the two nations, how it's been treated both domestically across the border in Pakistan and of course globally. And it's been no surprise, I guess, in many ways that the Sikh population, both domestically and, of course, throughout the diaspora, has overwhelmingly really been more in support of Pakistan's status in this conflict than India's. Now, of course, we have the deep historic roots behind that, of course, the ongoing persecution of the Sikh community by the Indian government. But ultimately, what it really does symbolise is Sikhs, as a philosophy, always stand up against oppression, they stand up against injustice, and they will always stand up for the truth. And therefore, they have taken a very, well, I'd say relatively balanced view of this conflict between India and Pakistan. And they said, no, there is only one aggressor in this situation, and that is India. Pakistan was not the aggressor in this situation. Clearly, this Pahalgam attack, well, in the view of many people, it was a false flag attack. But ultimately, the reason that Sikhs have supported Pakistan, particularly in this situation, is because they see there is only one aggressor here, and that is India, and that Pakistan was the victim of this aggression. Therefore, they are standing up once again to this aggression, to this injustice, and therefore the endorsement, it is an endorsement for Pakistan to be supported by the Sikh community. They should actually see it almost as a compliment, saying, yes, we agree, you are the victims in this situation. So there is that element. The other element also to point out is the fact that the Sikh community has always, as I say, always stood up for truth. It has always stood up against oppression and persecution. And it is very important that they have recognised that the Indian government here, particularly, and again, we must reiterate this point, that it is the target of all this is against the Indian government, the RSS, the Hindutva extremism. It is not the people of India, who ultimately are just as victims in this situation as anybody else. It is the Indian government that are the aggressor here. And one only needs to look at, for example, in recent times in Bangladesh, when Sheikh Hasina fled Bangladesh, is that the Hindus, the Hindu minority in Bangladesh, were turned upon by the Muslim population, and they were the subject of all sorts of dreadful violence. And of course, in India, you saw the right-wing extremists, the Hindutva extremists, standing up saying, this is outrageous, you can't persecute a minority like that. Well, lo and behold, what have you been doing in India? You've been persecuting minorities. Your Muslim minority, that is what has been going on in India. So there's a level of hypocrisy here. And again, and to come back to your point, James, about Khalistan, Khalistan reflects the whole concept of Sikhi, which is to treat your fellow human beings as equal, regardless of their background, their religious beliefs, or their ethnicities. That is what Khalistan stands for. That is what Sikhi represents, and therefore, in this situation, I think the Sikh population have said, look, no, we're not really taking sides here. We are just, they basically, the average Sikh wants to get on with the average Hindu, and likewise they want to get on with the average Muslim. That is never an issue, and that is what Khalistan will stand for, where all humans are treated as equal. Where their ire, their anger, their target has been once again, it's the Hindutva RSS extremists. And likewise on this programme, again, as I often say, we are not anti-India. We are pro-India, we are pro-Pakistan. We on this programme do not take sides between India and Pakistan as a people, as a nation. What we target always is against extremism, whether it is Islamic extremism or whether it is RSS, Hindutva extremism. It is the extremists that we always target and will point out, because that is the greatest threat to all of us, whether you're an average Hindu, you're an average Sikh, or you're an average Muslim. It is extremism that is always that threat, and that is what we must continue to point out, James.
Absolutely, Angus. And it just goes to show, though, that the Sikh community is getting some respect in return, because all too often they are overlooked when they step in, or they are voicing an opinion or a stand against oppression and against what's wrong. So when they take that stand, a lot of times they don't get the appreciation it's due. So it's really nice to see someone standing up and giving them that. Now, of course, we know that that is not what Sikh is about. They don't need recognition. They don't expect it, and they almost shy away from it because it's just what they do that's embedded within their soul and their humanity. Now, of course, with that said, we know that they play a pivotal role around the world, and that seems to be taking shape in an even bigger form here in Canada, Angus. Of course, with Mark Carney making his selections for the different appointments, both for his ministers as well as other appointments for leading the nation and our international affairs. He actually went with a very balanced cabinet this time. It's almost equally split down the center as opposed to males and females or men and women in different roles. But also he has taken it to another level to make sure that all different minority groups are represented equally or even more than equally. And that's because he picked the people that he felt were best for the job, not intending to go with any type of DEI or any other policies, but instead just selecting those who were best for the positions that they were suited for and what he needed to fill in terms of his cabinet. Now, there was a very large turnover in the number of people. Approximately 10 or so were actually fresh faces that he made changes to. And of course, this is a big news in the Sikh world because three new appointments, of course, were of Sikh ancestry and Sikh religious background that are going to help to bring Canada forward. So let's take a look at who he has appointed. And again, it was a great opportunity to really give the recognition which is due to our Canadian Sikh community, which is close to 1 million strong. So that's great. Now, Maninder Sidhu was the MP for Brampton East who stepped forward first with his turban, a vibrant emblem of his heritage. Appointed Minister of International Trade, Sidhu's rise was a story of grit and community. A first-generation Canadian born to Punjabi parents, he had built a reputation as a tireless advocate for Brampton's diverse suburbs. His entrepreneurial background and his founding of the Kindness Movement, a charity supporting disadvantaged students in Canada and India, had endeared him to his constituents. So well respected, well thought of, and just has a massive impact in the community. And now he's taking that forward to represent Canada as in our trade relations. This, of course, under the on-again, off-again tariffs by Donald Trump. Hopefully he is in for a challenge and will be able to kind of smooth things over with the U.S. to make a pathway for negotiations and to finally settle these tariff wars back and forth for good. Now, this is, he went on to say that this is for every kid in Brampton who's been told they can't make it. And that's what he had told reporters with his voice steady but emotional. We're here and we're ready to lead is what he closed off saying. So again, another strong leader that will take the helm. Next was Ruby Sahota, the MP for Brampton North, named Secretary of State for Combating Crime. She's a lawyer by training. Sahota has been a fixture in Brampton's political scene since her election in 2015. Her riding has been plagued by rising car thefts and gang activity, demanding a fierce advocate, and Sahota fits that bill. Her appointment was personal. She'd grown up hearing stories of her grandparents' struggles in Punjab and their resilience in building a new life in Canada. As she swore her oath, her mind was on the young children watching from the audience, and she said, "I want them to know that our values, service, justice, and community can shape this country." She said in a statement posted on X, Carney's choice of Sahota signals his focus on public safety, a nod to suburban voters grappling with urban challenges. Her role though Junior carried weight in the cabinet tasked with restoring trust and governance. And that is an issue that is seen from coast to coast to coast in Canada, and that is the reduction of crime. We have issues, whether it is gang related or whether it has to do with with the opioid epidemic that's still sweeping the nation, the overdose crisis, and to be able to deal with the crime that's associated not only with that, but in spite of that as well. So again, welcome to Ruby Sahota in her new role. I have no doubt that she will be an amazing addition to the cabinet and to the leadership. Now let's take a look at Randeep Sarai, the MP for Surrey Newton, not far from my house here in Surrey. So again, a local MP that has made the rounds and moving on up. Now, he is rounding out that trio as Secretary of State for International Development. He is a lawyer and a community organizer. Sarai has deep roots in British Columbia's Sikh heartland. Elected in 2015, he earned a reputation for bridging divides. Whether through his work on parliamentary committees or his advocacy for Surrey's youth, his appointment was a surprise to some, as he likes to keep a lower profile than some of his counterparts. Carney, though, saw in him a steady hand for Canada's global aid efforts. As he stood at Rideau Hall, Sarai thought of his father, a mill worker who faced discrimination in Canada's early days. He went on to state that this role is about showing the world what Canada stands for: compassion, fairness, and strength. He tweeted later, his words resonating with the diaspora watching closely. And now all of these appointments sparked a wave of celebration in Sikh communities from Vancouver to Brampton. At the Gurdwara Nanak Darbar in Montreal, elders gathered to share sweets, their prayers filled with gratitude. In Surrey, a community radio station dedicated an evening to callers sharing their stories of the MP's families, many of whom had ties to Punjab's agriculture heartlands. On X, posts from outlets such as Baz News and voices like @thind_Akasheep hailed the moment as historic with hashtags such as hashtag Sikh Pride. Those were trending. So again, it has had a massive impact and really a major support as well for those choices. Now, of course, there were some people who were trying to figure out or making assumptions that the appointments may have been tokenism, pointing to Carney's need to balance regional and ethnic representation. But again, it is just a matter of Carney responding to these things, stating no, he just absolutely picked the people that were right for the positions and right for the country. And that is, I think, a huge nod of appreciation and acknowledgement of the abilities of the Sikh people. So again, it's going to bring our country into a much better place, I believe, by having those three appointees added. So again, congratulations to all of them, and as well to the Sikh community, who now have a very fine representation in Ottawa and for Canada around the world. Now, back in Brampton, one report online stated that a young girl named Simran was watching the swearing-in on her family's TV. Her father, who is a truck driver, pointed at Sidhu's turban and said, "That's us up there." Simran smiled, clutching her notebook where she scribbled her dream to become the first Canadian Sikh Prime Minister. So maybe when she grows up, we will see that happen. We will watch how this is going to influence the next generation, Angus, and show them that anything is possible with hard work, dedication, and of course, in this case, sticking to your true values, your beliefs, and your ability to help others.
Indeed, and I think really that final paragraph that you talked about, I think really is so important about this whole story, is it is aspirational. Every time a Sikh from the community rises above the rest of their fellow human beings to these great positions of power and responsibility, it always sends out such a powerful and positive message to fellow Sikhs in the community saying, I've managed it and therefore you can manage it. It sends out a real positive feeling that yes, it is possible to break down those barriers and to reach important positions and have a position that where you can influence and control policy and society around you. So it's simply in that respect, it is significant beyond belief. It's fantastic news, this. It's also I think from a political perspective, you can look at it really from two views. Firstly, it's fantastic that the three Sikhs have got to ministerial positions, primarily because it now means that Sikh politics and Sikh issues now have found a voice in such a lofty position in Canadian politics. It means that when that cabinet makes its decisions and each department makes its decisions, there are three powerful voices around that cabinet table saying, you've got to take into account our opinions as well. Whereas before, there were no Sikh voices or very few Sikh voices around that cabinet table. So again, just their very presence in the cabinet has a massive proportional influence on policy making across a whole raft of political issues. Secondly, also then, it also means that these three politicians, and again, James, we often talk about politicians and we often sneer at politicians and say that they tend on the whole to be driven by, I would say, less than positive values. They tend to be driven by, to use simple terms, money, greed and control and power. Let's be honest about it, it's human nature amongst many. But we do know that Sikh politicians on the whole are generally driven by the desire to do good for their fellow human beings. They are driven by their nurtured position of being Sikhs, of going to the Gurdwaras regularly, of being brought up in Sikh families. So, of course, infused in their personality, infused in their very motivations are the philosophies and the principles of Sikhi. And so, therefore, it's very likely that these three politicians are politicians of conviction. They will follow their beliefs and they will absolutely be driven not by the negative values of humanity, but by the very positive values of Sikhi. And that in itself is very, very good and very powerful. And then just to turn a slightly negative spin on this, from a more cynical point of view, for the purpose of balance, I suspect there was also a very long and hard, I would say, discussion behind the scenes about this on behalf of Mark Carney and his advisors and those who were planning all this, let's say the powers behind the throne. I suspect they realised from a simple, cynical point of view, we have a very large Sikh voting base. We do need to ensure that they feel that they have been rewarded for their support, and therefore we do need to find a way to do that. And of course, three Sikh appointees is really paying due service to the Sikh electorate, saying thank you for your support. In return, we will now give you three ministerial positions. So there is an element of that. But what is great to see is the Liberal Party, despite my personal reservations about Mark Carney, the party as a whole has actually lived up to its standards. It's lived up to its name. It has become a Liberal Party in terms of its makeup. It has been this diverse cabinet. It has become a diverse cabinet, and it has these three powerful Sikh voices up there at senior positions. I think this is fantastic news, James, certainly for the Canadian Sikh diaspora going forward, and hopefully North America as a whole.
Absolutely, Angus. And one funny note that we can laugh at is that Chandra Arya's position as a lobbyist for the Hindu extremist groups here in Canada with his new organization just got much harder. So
absolutely,
not only did he get kicked out of politics, but now his job's even gotten harder for being a lobbyist.
Yeah, and absolutely, and that really is an important point. Firstly, because it sends such a powerful message to the community. You will win this battle against Hindutva extremism by constant politics, by getting involved in local politics and getting up those political ladders. Because once you get to those positions of power, you then hold the positions where you can get your voice heard, your issues become more dominant, and by your very presence, you're pushing out those Hindutva extremists. And this is why this is such great news for Canada. And which does actually lead on very conveniently to my first story, James. And that is, again, I talked about politicians of conviction. They are sadly very few and far between. But we do, here in the UK, we have had a few politicians of, I would say, conviction. Politicians that I certainly have a huge amount of respect for, because they're not driven by power and greed and all those negative human emotions. They are driven literally by principles. and convictions. And I can think of, I mean, ironically, even though my personal politics sit more on the right wing, the people I've respected most of all have been on the left wing. I can think of Tony Benn being one prime example for British viewers. But a particular politician I've always had massive respect for many decades. I still believe he is one of the most underrated, most talented politicians of our generation. That is a guy called George Galloway. Again, he's a very powerful speaker. He's a real old school politician. In fact, many may remember him from the Iraq War, the original Iraq War. He stood up in front of the US Senate and gave them an absolute blasting. He was hauled up in front of them to explain why he was so anti-Iraq war. And he sat in front of them and he called them lickspittle amongst many other epithets. I mean, he really gave it to them. Absolute full broadside, unafraid, a brilliant speaker. And I challenge anybody to debate this guy and win. You've no chance. The BBC have tried on regular occasions and failed miserably. So his voice as a political politician, he's an ex-MP, he's no longer an MP. He has his own talk show actually, and it's well worth a watch. It's called the mother of all talk shows. His name is George Galloway. Now, why am I talking about George Galloway? George Galloway is a politician who has represented minorities in the UK for many decades. He's, again, a very powerful speaker, and he represents them not just to get into positions of power, to become a politician. It's because he's generally driven by his feelings of humanity. He hates persecution wherever it is, anywhere around the world. You watch his talk show, he always talks about persecution and oppression of minorities, particularly it's a Muslim minority he particularly favours. But ultimately, he has spoken about all minorities who have been persecuted anywhere in the world. Now, interestingly, yesterday or the day before, he released the following video, which I saw, and I thought, that's interesting. Here's what George Galloway had to say.
Peace, love, and justice are indeed our worthy goals that we share. And they haven't been doing too well as ideals of late. That is for sure. I'm very glad that the firing has ceased, at least officially, along the line of control between India and Pakistan. The terrorist attack that you referred to was indeed a heinous and barbarous attack on civilian people. 24 or 25 people were cruelly murdered, most of them Hindus, but also Muslims and Christians. I said at the time, I say it again now, I believe that terrorist attack was a false flag attack. I do not believe the story that the government of India gave, but that doesn't mean I want there to be a war between India and Pakistan. I definitely do not. As someone with a great deal of love for and experience in the Indian subcontinent, the very last thing in the world, on top of all the other issues of poverty and development, of actual terrorism, infiltrated into Pakistan, for example, from Afghanistan over many decades, fostered by the policies of the empire. The last thing I want to see is guns blazing and people dying between India and Pakistan. So I very much hope that conflict will not restart. But I have to say, as I've said all along, as long as the people of Kashmir are not free to decide their own destiny, then the war between India and Pakistan is always waiting to happen. The only way of ensuring that there will be no future Indo-Pak wars is for the people of Jammu and Kashmir to be given what the United Nations unanimously in the 1950s decided that they must have, which is a free and fair plebiscite to decide where and with whom they want to be.
So George Galloway actually said that he believes the Pahalgam attack was an Indian false flag attack. He said that absolutely clearly and unambiguously. And he also says that he demands there should be a plebiscite as per the UN. In other words, there should be referendums a referendum in J&K over independence, and of course, likewise by extension in Punjab as well. So interesting from George Galloway. He's, I would say, a relatively independent speaker about, and it's interesting his alignment with us as well. He has no truck with India as a nation and against the Indian people. Like us, he is very, very pro-India. He loves India. He loves the Indian people. What he doesn't like is Hindutva extremism. And that's how he aligns with us. So interesting that even people like George Galloway, British politicians, are saying that the Pahalgam attack was indeed false flag. Now, in terms of, as I said in the introduction, this conflict that fortunately has now abated, but this conflict between the two nations has extended massively into an information war. The amount of misinformation that's been spinning around over the last week or two about this conflict, about anti-Pakistan misinformation, anti-Sikh misinformation, has of course reached a bit of a crescendo. And interestingly, many of the Indian outlets have actually started to openly admit that there is an information war, and they are admitting that they are quite happily spreading misinformation. Let me show you, for example, this is the Jaipur Dialogues. This, again, an online news outlet. They actually said in information warfare, perception is the battlefield. If it damages Pakistan, true or false, it doesn't matter. Amplify it, post it, share it, make it viral. Let panic spread across the border. But if the news harms India, even if it's true, bury it, suppress it, disarm it before it spreads. This isn't journalism, this is war. Psychological warfare matters. Every post is a bullet. So there is the Jaipur Dialogues actually admitting, let's use misinformation to damage the enemy. Let's bury the truth if it damages us. So they're, again, very, very openly admitting that they are using misinformation to change perception. And even on their website, Sanjay Dixit, the founder and chairman of the Jaipur Dialogues, admits this is about why people should support the Jaipur Dialogues. Support us in nation-building efforts and all efforts in support of rehabilitation of the cultural and civilizational causes by those who believe in India as a civilizational entity. By that, read Hindutva Rashtra. That's what it's all about. In other words, the whole concept of the Jaipur Dialogues is to push Hindutva ideology. In other words, Hindutva have openly admitted once again they are using misinformation to try and win back the narrative, even though it's a fake, false narrative. And one of our old friends, Palki Sharma, who will be a name familiar to many of our audience, Palki Sharma is another Indian journalist, a very, I would say, the very favourite darling of Hindutva and of the RSS. She's always rolled out to interview people to push the Hindutva agenda. She's always reading out pro-Hindutva, pro-RSS, pro-Modi, BJP news articles. Palki Sharma was recorded recently in this interview, and again she's been accused regularly, certainly by us on this programme, of just being a mouthpiece for the RSS. She of course has been quite happily using misinformation and promoting misinformation wherever she can, and in fact I refer our audience back to an interview she did recently with the Prime Minister of New Zealand, where she pushed repeatedly about Khalistan supporters and pushed the New Zealand Prime Minister to condemn the Khalistan movement, condemn them as terrorists, and he repeatedly refused to do so, saying, no, we don't do that, we are democratic, we believe in the freedom of speech, we believe in the right for Khalistanis to promote and to protest, indeed, about their sovereign rights for self-determination, despite Palki Sharma trying repeatedly to get him to say otherwise, and he refused. So again, she really is this mouthpiece of Hindutva. Here is said Palki Sharma in a recent interview. This is interesting to give her insight into her beliefs about misinformation.
The Pandavas, everyone wanted them to win, right? And they said they're fighting for dharma and they're fighting. They bet their wife in a game. How is that morally justifiable? They used all the tricks possible to win the war that they were supposed to win. And yet they justified everything. कि कृष्ण उनके साथ थे और ये भी कर लो, ऐसे भी कर, सब कुछ किया उन्होंने और वो जीत भी गए और वो they remain the good guys. How do you do that? When you set the narrative, when you're in control of the story, then you can do that. Yeah. And I come back, that's where the media comes in, that's where all of us come in. This is a time when we are shaping the narrative for our country.
Wow. So there, Palki Sharma actually admits, and the reference there, the Pandavas, they were a group referring to the 5 legendary brothers who were the central figures of the Hindu epic Mahabharata. Basically, what she's saying is, even though that they were basically immoral and really negative figures, they were the evil figures, ultimately they became the good guys because they controlled the narrative. And she says that is what the media's job in India is to do now, is to paint India as the good guys, despite it doesn't matter what India does, whatever evil it does, whatever that government does, as long as they control the narrative, they control the story, they can control people's perception of India, of the Indian government. And that is exactly what she and the mainstream Indian media have done. They have controlled the narrative. Despite India's evil, or the Indian government's evil actions, they control the narrative, and therefore they can paint India as the good guys. How interesting that was. And just to wrap up, Jaskaran Sandhu, he's the co-founder of Baz News, and he's a lawyer actually in Brampton. Jaskaran also, about this information warfare that's going on, he wrote a very interesting quick piece in, I think it was an X, talking about this India trying to control the narrative, but why it's actually interestingly losing this information war. As we keep saying, we think India is really again on the back foot because of this whole misinformation war. And what Jaskaran says, he asked this question: why does India keep losing the narrative wars? It is because basically their reputation has become as one of being shameless disinformation mongers. Their mainstream media and infamous IT cells openly talk about spreading lies to further self-interest. And I've just shown you Palki Sharma as an example of that. But what are the long-term impacts of this? Well, people then naturally start tuning you out. You attract scrutiny. Everyone doubts everything that you then say. You've cried wolf once too often, in other words. Your credibility just disappears. You have zero journalistic standards, which is also why, as he refers, India ranks so low on the World Free Press Index. And as he says, you become a joke. Low IQ takes won't cut it on the world stage. It may work domestically in India, of course. Your Indian audience will lap it up, like as he said, across the Cowbelt region. But anywhere else, it makes you look foolish. And India's social media accounts, namely the IT cells, which we do know, of course, are numerous, they've burnt every bridge possible. They have also attracted mockery on anything to do with India. These guys are just scoring self-goals, own goals all the time. And who are India's allies anyway? Who is amplifying and supporting India's narrative? The global south? Not really. They've burned too many bridges, and China is actually is taking them for a ride. The West? No, of course. India's position over the Ukraine-Russia war, it's flip-flopping backwards and forwards. Its support of both Russia and of both Ukraine is alienating the West. Of course, its transnational repression against influential Sikhs have made India completely untrustworthy. The West just doesn't trust India. India may be a large market, but sadly, its infrastructure is terrible. The vast majority of its population is disenfranchised, it's poor, and it is neglected by the government, thanks primarily to the caste system. India aren't the global power that they're making themselves out to be. There are lots of reasons for India's inability to win the narrative internationally, and only India can blame itself for that. So a powerful, short piece by Jaskaran Sandhu, the founder of Baz News there. So James, I think ultimately it is interesting that despite, unfortunately, the physical conflict might have resided, but this information war is absolutely reaching this massive crescendo. But interestingly, the Hindutva mouthpieces are openly admitting now, yeah, of course, this is what we do. But almost as a result of that, and it does appear that they've just gone too far now, because the global audience have realised that this is what it is. It's just pure misinformation. India has lost control of the narrative. It is losing this misinformation war despite what they're doing, and they're getting increasingly desperate. And the more desperate that India is becoming, or these IT cells are becoming, the more credibility they are losing. So James, I think this is very good news. I think the stance that Sikhs have taken in this recent conflict has been rewarded. accompanied by recognition and acknowledgement for what Sikhi stands for. I think that will stand positively for the concept of khalistan in the international community's perception. And I think India is now on the back foot. They are losing this war. They are losing the propaganda war. They are losing the information war. And therefore, I think it is very likely that they are going to be in a very weak position when it comes to the negotiations over the khalistan establishment.
Absolutely, Angus. And I mean, you can look at the historical context going back to 1947 partition, where they've had disputes over Kashmir, and that's fueled multiple wars and multiple skirmishes that have happened. But going back with that, as it moved forward, they both, of course, crafted their competing narratives to justify their actions and to rally their domestic support. And with that, of course, they really pushed starting in the early to mid 1960s is when they really started to control the narrative in the news media and utilizing that as a weapon against each other. So now when you jump forward to 2025, of course, you know, that was sparked by a series of events again in Kashmir. But India and Pakistan started again with their narratives in the media, and this time especially in social media. And that could include the reports by Pakistan that they shot down five military aircraft. Of course, India denied any losses, and it just, you know, that's just a clear example with the manipulated photos and media that accompanied this most recent dispute that, yeah, it shows that the media can have a very powerful impact. But I think you're right when you say that the general public and the world have caught on to the game and are getting really tired of this same old when it comes to these false narratives that are being pushed by India.
Indeed, and I think despite what Palki Sharma may claim, ultimately the truth always prevails. Democracy always prevails.
That's
the
correct.
rule of law always prevails. This is why India is losing this battle.
That's right.
The message to the Sikh community is just keep doing what you're doing. You are winning this war, which is very great news. Now, let's wrap up our news segments with, again, another nice, positive, good news story. And this is about a film. And in fact, we did cover this. I think it was last autumn. We covered this. It was a film. We did indeed. It's a film about, of all things, it's called American Sikh, and it's about Captain America, who is a Sikh. And this film, it's an animated film. It was Oscar qualified. And it's just been awarded Best Animation Video and Film in the 29th Annual Webby Awards, a top-tier award for digital content. Now, winning a Webby is really quite a significant honour. It's usually reserved for world-class creators and companies. And the Webby Awards are awards for excellence on the internet presented annually by the International Academy of Digital Arts and Sciences. And that's a judging body composed of over 3,000 industry experts and technology innovators. So it's no small thing, this. It's fabulous. And the Sikh Coalition were involved in this. They were executive producers of the film alongside Vishwajit Singh, who was responsible for this film. He was the creator. And it's been well promoted and it's received a series of accolades right across the media spectrum. And Ryan Westra and Vishwajit Singh, they are the co-creators, actually, of American Sikh. The film itself is the true and unlikely story of an American-born, turban-wearing Sikh man who, after a lifetime of facing prejudice, self-doubt and violence, finally finds acceptance in a superhero costume. And the film itself, and if you watch the film, and I do urge our audience to watch it. I think it is on YouTube. There's to take a few key quotes from it. What is it really about? Well, one quote is, "I used to be seen as an outsider. Now they see me as a villain." Of course, being a Sikh, wearing a turban, and of course this particularly references 9/11, what happened post 9/11, where people, the backlash after the 9/11 attack, people just saw anybody with a different skin colour than white, saw them as enemies. So of course, if you were walking around wearing your dastar, wearing your turban, and of course you immediately were painted as a terrorist. And of course, sadly, the first innocent victim of hate crime was, of course, a Sikh who was murdered shortly after 9/11. So the film does refer to how Sikhs in the community, certainly post-11, were seen as villains. And the character then says, "I want people to see me not as an outsider, but as I am, a Sikh and an American. So he then becomes Sikh Captain America. He enrobes himself as Captain America, and as a result, as the film unfolds, he becomes a celebrity. People stop seeing him as a person who wears a turban or a different skin colour, but just sees him firstly as an American, secondly as Captain America, and thirdly as this heroic celebrity figure. Basically, he becomes a celebrity. It's a great little animation. And Vishav, I can't pronounce his name, my apologies to Vishwajit Singh. He's actually a South Asian American and obviously a Sikh, and he's publicly become known as this Sikh Captain America persona. And he's gone around America really promoting this character for for various reasons, but not least just to promote the situation of the Sikh community. And again, to educate. It's all about educating the wider world about who Sikhs are and what they represent. The film itself has garnered a whole host of awards, including the 2023 Tribeca Festival, Best Short Animation at Sidewalk Film Festival, Best Animation at San Diego Film Festival, etc., etc. The list is long and really illustrious. And of course, they've just been awarded this Webby. And as a result, and inspired by this great response from the world at large, of course, Vishwajit realised that there is a place for this film and the message it sends in education, in schools. So what he's now doing, he's working with 2 teachers at Altair Education Consulting to create 11 lesson plans for grades 6 to 12, inspired by film themes and media representations, exploring the identity of Sikhs, understanding what happened post 9/11 and the perspective of Sikhs amongst the wider population, and discovering the power of personal narrative and storytelling, basically how important and how powerful media and storytelling can be in educating the wider audience. And they do say actually on their website why this project matters. They said, look, outside of India, there are very few Sikhs seen in media. And due to this lack of representation and the statistically small global population of Sikhs as a whole in the diaspora, the vast majority of Americans and the world at large know almost nothing about Sikhs. And it's this lack of knowledge is really causing xenophobia, intolerance, racism, and of course leads on to violent hate crime. So it's all about educating, particularly getting people when they're young, educating who Sikhs are, what they are all about, what they represent, and therefore as they've grown into mature adults, they understand and respect the Sikh community and see it for the goodness that it does for society as a whole. So there you go, James. We often talk about the power of media and why Sikhs should get more involved in media, should become more creative. Do get involved wherever possible in creating films. It doesn't matter how small they are, even relatively small. This is a 10-minute animation, but look the impact it's had on the wider world. It's won all these awards. It's having a massive educational influence. It's now getting involved in schools across North America. This is why Sikhs should. Don't be afraid. Step up. Get involved. Be creative. Create these animations. Create whatever it is. Get on YouTube. Talk about your community. Talk about what Sikh represents. It doesn't matter how small. It doesn't matter how small scale it is. Every voice matters. They all add to this overall clamour of the Sikh community. It's all about telling the world who Sikhs are, what they represent, and the goodness they bring to the world as a whole, James.
Absolutely, and for those interested, if you search the archives of our previous shows, going back, I believe it was about this time last year, late summer actually, if I'm not mistaken, that we did cover this program in one of our episodes, and we actually, I believe, showed a trailer, Angus, so they can go back to our archives, look at some of our older shows, and actually see the trailer of that, or just search it online. But congratulations to them. It is a huge leap forward for Sikh representation within media. And I think that is a cornerstone of leadership, of really inspiring not just current animators and current storytellers, but the next generation of storytellers, which I think are going to be very prominent, to not only in the Sikh storytelling, but I think international, whether it's Hollywood, whether it is anywhere else here in Vancouver, Toronto. I think that media hubs around the world are going to see a bigger presence of Sikh stories and Sikh creators. So congratulations, an award well deserved.
Indeed, and if you go to YouTube, I think if you search for American Sikh on YouTube, I think the actual film itself does come up. It's worth a watch and worth a support. Do extend your support to Vishwajit Singh for his wonderful film.
That's right.
Right, James, let's move on to our comments column. And at the end of last week, I did an interview. Sorry, well, I beg your pardon, it wasn't the end of last week, it was early this week. It all blurs into a massive news stories. It was early this week, Monday it was, I interviewed Congressman Trent Franks, a huge supporter of both the Sikh community, but also a huge supporter of the Khalistan concept. He is indeed himself a board member of the Khalistan Caucus Foundation, and I interviewed Trent about the current situation between India and Pakistan, and of course exploring various solutions to that. And of course, as we've discussed, James, this establishment of Khalistan as this buffer zone, and he talked at great length about that. So do if you're watching, do look out that interview I did with Congressman Franks. It was a very revealing interview. Of course, he had to be quite diplomatic in his language because he is a very high-profile figure. But I think the message that he sends was very unambiguous and very clear. So loads of comments after that video, and surprisingly, it went very widely, that video. Human started off, as did many others, and saying, look, Khalistan is the only solution to bring peace to the region. And Bachitovic followed up likewise, Khalistan, a buffer Sikh state, is necessary for peace and prosperity of this region. And of course, those two were just two of the leading comments, but they reflected, I would say, the vast majority of comments after that interview, where so many people said, look, actually, this is the answer. James, I think we really have come up with the answer for this. It is the establishment, firstly, of the DMZ, the demilitarized zone, but that is the first incremental step to building this overall buffer zone into the concept of Khalistan.
Absolutely. I think that it is something that not only benefits the region, but I think benefits the world in such a strong, but in a new modern way that really combines a lot of the modernization, but at the same time it respects the traditions and cultures.
Indeed. Gianagra says, great discussion. The majority of Indians don't understand what actually would happen to their country if nuclear war starts. Well, I don't know if that is true or not. I think certainly the average human being, when they consider nuclear war, I think they probably understand the concept of mutually assured destruction. In other words, nuclear war, nobody wins. Literally nobody on the planet wins. There are no winners. Everybody loses, James. That is why nuclear weapons, as horrible as they are, they have actually maintained peace, because everybody knows if anybody pushes a button anywhere, it probably will lead to global Armageddon, and then the whole planet basically just implodes in a dreadful white flash.
Exactly. It'll be, I would make references there, but of course it is, there's no reference to be had. It is the end of the all ends. So again, it is important for people to remember that the majority of those remember what happened in the country, but at the same time, I don't think a lot of people outside the Sikh community know what happened to the Sikh Empire, to the colonization by the British, and then separation in 1947. So I think that, you need to look at the education of the gravity of all of these things combined. And that is educating on nuclear war just as much as it is about educating on how the world has geopolitically changed over time, but how certain nations got screwed out of their own homeland and how we can make that right in this day and age.
Indeed. And Hat B says, look, Chiting Simpura massacre was clearly a false flag attack. The Kanishka, the Air India bombing, was clearly an Indian false flag. But India keeps doing it because the world keeps letting them get away with it. Absolutely. And likewise, the Pahalgam attack, which George Galloway, even he said it earlier, he said, look, even the Pahalgam attack clearly was an Indian false flag attack. And the reason they keep doing it is they keep getting away with it. I suppose the hard part really here, realistically, is how on earth can you prove it? And as Hat B says, it does need an independent, unbiased investigation. Why won't India refuse this? Well, why do you think? I think we all know why. It's because likely it was a false flag attack. This is the modus operandi of India. They keep doing it because they keep getting away with it, James.
Absolutely. And I mean, we can look at the Flight Air India still there's a lot of questions that have gone unanswered. There is a demand to open a new inquiry. But again, it is such a delicate issue because many people are satisfied with the results that came out of the first investigation, right or wrong. They are satisfied with that. Then you move on, you've got the group that just doesn't want to pull that Band-Aid off again. They don't want to face the emotional and the political pain that's going to come with reopening those wounds once again. And then you have the other side that's demanding that answers be brought forward, right, wrong, or indifferent, that it is time to get the truth out there. And I think that's what scares India a lot, is that part stating that the truth should come out, that this time, if there's an inquiry and investigation, the investigators are not going to be told to avoid including India, the RSS, and RAW in that investigation like they were the first time, directed not to include those areas. So again, it is about all of these false flag instances that, again, as clearly stated, they keep getting away with. And that is a real troubling issue for the entire world, not just the region.
Indeed, and that's actually one of the questions I did ask Congressman Franks, was what if it was proved it was false flag? What would the implications be? Well, if you want to know his answer, watch the video. Danish Sahil, another gentleman from Pakistan in our audience. Fantastic. Thanks, Danish, for your comment. You are from Pakistan. I just want to ask a question. Why does Indian media spread fake news? They don't know how much they lose their credibility. Well, very good question. I think, hopefully, James, I think we've answered that if you're a regular viewer, you'll know that we answer that question on a regular basis. We know why they spread fake news, because they're trying to control the narrative. If you control the narrative, as Palki Sharma says, you basically change people's perceptions, their views. They start to believe you. That's what it's all about. In other words, you can spread lies. If you spread them widely enough and push them hard enough, people tend to believe it as truth. That's why it's so effective, James, isn't it?
Well, I could refer to certain countries currently, but I'll leave that one alone.
Indeed. Well, let's just say
but
most
it is
countries
so
are
true.
at it.
You repeat the lie enough times and people tend to believe it, Angus.
How many examples of that do we have? We don't have a show long enough. KJB Tube, many thanks for highlighting the plight. Absolutely, it's a pleasure. It certainly is an honour to do so. The government of India is illegally occupying Kashmir and Punjab through the barrel of the gun. It's a gross violation of human rights. It is, of course. It's fake democracy. It needs to be exposed. Well, this is why we exist, James. We exist to try and expose this fake democracy. And actually, I'll just pick up one point in this comment. India is illegally occupying Kashmir and Punjab. Well, this is the problem. Technically, they're not. They're not doing it illegally. This is why the whole thing is so evil. Is that it was written in India? Is this artificial construct of the British Empire, and colonial control was handed over from the British to the Brahmins. So the Brahmins control this artificial construct of India legally, and that is the problem. And the problem, therefore, really is about democracy. And actually, I suppose there's one nuance there, is that Narendra Modi ripped up the Indian constitution, which did give J&K reserve status. So in 2019, he ripped up that clause in the constitution and said, no, sorry, we're going to take full control. So that's the only... But again, it wasn't illegal. It was endorsed by the Supreme Court. So technically, it's legal, despite the fact it's undemocratic, despite the fact it's immoral. India has done everything legally, and that is the problem. They have weaponized the legal system to suit their agenda, and that's the problem, James. It's very clever.
It is, but also very concerning and very scary at the same time, because of the depth and the length of which the damage has been going. And again, legal or not, it is an atrocity that's been committed.
Indeed. And Preteen Dillon follows up by saying, look, there has to be a referendum without manipulation, basically a free and fair referendum that must take place. Couldn't agree more. And Ifti Ahmed says, look, when America can move European Jews and create a state for them in eastern Palestine, of course, Israel, why can't they do it with Khalistan? This is a very good question, James. When we had the will, post-Second World War, to create Israel, we did it just like that. A new country was established. It was a special sovereign homeland for the Jewish population. Why then can't we do it for Khalistan? And I think that's the key there. if we can persuade the international community that it is the right thing to do, Khalistan, for a sovereign nation for the Sikh community, like you did with Israel, then the international community will mobilise itself. They will impose on India and Pakistan this solution of Khalistan, James.
Absolutely, Angus, and it's it's a matter of just continuing the struggle, continuing the fight, and of course we're not going anywhere as the community's not. So again, just continue the awareness, the education, and of course the democratic process.
And final set of comments, just starting off with Jagroshan Singh, and just to practice my Punjabi, of course, which is fluent now, his comment actually translates as, thanks to Google, a request to the people of Satellite TV, please write and tell in Punjabi as well. Well, my message to you, Jagroshan, I hope you can understand what we're saying in English. We do have a Punjabi side to the channel. Unfortunately, James and I, our Punjabi is still struggling a little. We are still, sadly, beginners in Punjabi. But we have a massive Punjabi side to the channel. Surinder Singh and his colleagues on the Punjabi side daily produce programs in Punjabi. So if you haven't found them yet, check out the channel, check out the videos on the rest of the channel. We have a large Punjabi section. So please do check that out, Jagroshan, and thank you for watching us. But do, if you want to practice your English, keep watching, of course. And Jagtar Sidhu says, very well explained, my friends. God bless both sides of people of the Punjab. Both Punjabs are surrounded by corrupt politicians of India. James, how often have we talked about corrupt politicians? Where do we begin?
Oh, come on, Angus. There's no such thing as corrupt politicians, unicorns, or pots of gold at the end of the rainbow. Okay, maybe
Indeed,
2 out of 3 of those is correct.
But as we started the show off, there are 3 wonderful new politicians at ministerial level in Canada. So fingers crossed that we see more people who, more Sikhs basically, in politics, because I certainly would have no hesitation in voting for a Sikh, as should the rest of our society. Humanity says, thank you, gentlemen. This too is Seva. It is selfless service. Sikhs and so many others appreciate all that you're doing to stand up for truthfulness. Well, James, that is what we are. That is why Congressman Franks is so heavily involved, because we all see it is Seva. We're not doing it for our own benefit. We're doing it out of conviction. We believe that there is injustice going on against the Sikh community. I personally have often said I feel a debt of honour is owed by the British nation to the community. That is why I'm a vocal supporter of Khalistan. This is all about our selfless service, but it is all about producing the truth and pushing this whole agenda that we believe the Sikh community deserves its own homeland, James.
Absolutely, and I'd like to think that that is a part of the success of this channel and of our show in particular, is the sincerity that we bring it with, because it is something that we truly believe in, something that we truly support, and something that we truly want to see achieved over time. So again, I would hope that that authenticity adds to the success of why people watch this show. And as such, we always appreciate everybody watching. So share your comments in the comment section. We'd love to know.
Please do. And Sam Singh has the final word. Freedom is God-given right for every individual. Absolutely right. A powerful statement that underpins everything that we stand for. That underpins everything that we are pushing for. No, there's no secret about our agenda. Our agenda is about the rule of law. It is about democracy. It is about the simple human right for freedom. But on that profound note, that was Perspectives for another day, and indeed another week. Please don't forget to keep those comments coming in, though. We do love reading them. We do love talking about your comments. Don't forget, if you've got any criticisms, send them in. We're always delighted to have a bit of banter with our critics, which sadly, or fortunately, whichever way you look at it, are few and far between. But that is it. Don't forget, you can message us directly at message@satellitetv.com if there's anything you'd like to bring to our attention directly. But in the meantime, thanks so much for staying with us. Thanks so much for your loyalty. It is a goodbye from me. It is a goodbye from James.
Stay safe, everyone.
You have, of course, been watching Perspectives. We will see you next week.